Hey there, nation, and welcome to the show where we help you to play miniatures wargaming on a budget. It is I, Commander Cheapskate, and we are back in another episode of the Golden Age. This is our series of Warhammer Fantasy Battle Reports, and this is battle report number 138. It is a 3,000 point battle that is fought between Lizardmen as well as Legion of Chaos, dedicated to Nurgle. So as you can see here, we have both of our armies pretty much laid out on this one. My buddy Dark Lord Mac and I will be fighting at 3,000 points. And for those of you turning in for the very first time, what ended up happening is I actually made a 3,000 point Lizardman army for the studio. And so now I'm taking this army through its paces by fighting every single army in its Arc Studios collection. So this time I'm going against Dark Lord Mac and his Garden of Maladies, his 3,000 point Nurgle Legion of Chaos army. So we're going to play some background music real quick. As the music is playing, we will show you photos of both armies as well as our army rosters. If you want to see exactly what we're taking for this battle report, you can pause and take a look at your own leisure, or check down the description box below for more information. So that being said, let's get this battle report on a roll.
Crom, I've never prayed you before. I have no tongue for it. No one, not even you, will remember if we were good men or bad. Why we fought, or why we died. No. All that matters is that two stood against many. That's what's important. Valor pleases you, Crom. So grant me one request. Grant me revenge. And if you do not listen, then the hell with you.
So let's go talk about scenario rules real quick. We're playing Battle Line as the most typical game of Warhammer Fantasy that we play on this channel, with standard deployment as well as standard victory conditions. So now that we're done talking about the scenario rules, let's go and talk about deployment real quick. First of all, with the Garden of Maladies, Dark Lord Max 3,000 point Nurgle Legion of Chaos army. Deployed up front using Scout Special Rules are 2 units of Nurglings. We have the Inglorious as well as the Degenerates. Over here on the left-hand flank, we have Horticolic Slimex, the Exalted Hero, mounted on a Chaos War Shrine called Mulch. In the back of the army's general, which is Hastur the King in Yellow, he's a Demon Prince of Nurgle. Over on the left-hand side are the Dustmen, 17 Chaos Warriors of Nurgle, led by Festus the Leech Lord, empowered. He's the special character from the End Times rules. Over here on the right-hand side in the center are the Tallymen, a huge unit of Plague Bearers, led by Barnabas the Scrimmer, who's also the army's Battle Standard Bearer. He's also a Herald of Nurgle. And finally, make up his right-hand flank, we have 2 units of Plague Drones. On the left-hand side is the Droning Horrors. Right-hand side is the Ruination of Prague. Now, moving on to my army, my 3,000 point army, which is the Lizards of Waaaghz, starting on the left-hand flank. I'm going to get zoomed in here. Over here with the Jurassic Jousters on the left-hand side, followed by Gatorade and Powerade, followed by Squirrel and the Totodile, which is my Troglodon. Over here, we have a huge unit of Temple Guards called the Guacamole Guards, and there's the Kermit the Slime, which is my army's general, as well as Battle Standard Bearer. Follow right here in the front. Here in the front, we have the Thesaurus, which is a unit of 40 Saurus Warriors. In the back, right behind them, we have my 3 members of the Charizards. And finally, making my right-hand flank over here on the right-hand side, that is the Karma Chameleons with both Slag and Snarl, my 2 level 1 Skink Priests. And that pretty much makes the deployment on this one. So deployment over with, we go directly to the top of turn number 1, and both Dark Lord Mac and I roll off for initiative to see which of us will be going first. Alright, so that takes directly to the top of turn number 1, and I get to get the initiative on this one, so I get to go first. So this photo is taken after the movement phase, and as you can see, I pretty much start taking the aggressive on this one. First thing I do, of course, I declare a charge with my Jurassic Jousters directly into the Inglorious. But unfortunately for me, though, I just flood my charge roll, so I only go forward 4 inches, which is really, really sad. They, of course, elect to stand and hold their ground. Meanwhile, on the right-hand side here, though, I was able to get off the charge with Gatorade and Powerade, as well as Squirtle and the Totodile that go directly into the Degenerates. And between you and me, I know exactly what's going to happen. I'm going to crush these guys pretty hard. However, the problem I'm going to run into, though, is if I might have to overrun in this situation, and I didn't really take that into account, which means if I don't overrun far enough, I'll just put my Carnosaur right in the middle of the open space, in which case Dark Lord Max forces can actually charge and forward, so that was kind of a bad move. Meanwhile, over here on the right-hand side, the Guacamole Guards, as well as the Thesaurus, they also march up forward as quick as they can, followed by the Karma Chameleons, who move up their normal movement allowance. That way I can stand and shoot if I have to, in case the Droning Horrors or the Ruination of Prague decide to get squirrely and attack forward. And at the same time, I also move up my Charizards to kind of protect my right-hand flank as well. And that, ladies and gentlemen, pretty much makes up my move phase for turn number 1. So with move phase over with, we go directly to the magic phase. So, during the magic phase, I had a pretty lackluster magic phase, all things considered. The first thing I did, of course, I took Carrot the Slan, had him cast off his spell, Arcane and Forging, off directly onto Festus the Empowered. Unfortunately for me, though, I thought that character wore Chaos Armor for some strange reason, but I found out later on during this turn he actually does not wear Chaos Armor, so I wasn't able to put a wound on him. However, though, I was able to destroy his Pestilent Poisons, but that wasn't the objective. The objective was actually to put a wound onto Festus, but luckily for my opponent, though, that happened because with that spell, Arcane and Forging, you can't hurt somebody if they don't have armor, so that part was kind of rough. Meanwhile, I did cast a couple of spells over here on the right-hand side of the battlefield directly into the Ruination of Prague. I was able to get off the boosted version of Soul Quench off with Kermit the Slan, firing that magic missile directly from one of my Skink Priests because I could use that ability for Arcane Vassal. Was able to kill off one of those guys and actually put 2 more fluting wounds on another one as well, so that part was kind of nice. Killing those plague drones kind of softens up this right hand flank a little bit. At the same time, my very last spell I was able to cast was with Slag. He managed to Snarl, my Skink Priest from the Lower Beast. He opened fire with Amber Spear directly into one of the members of the Ruination of Prague, but unfortunately though, I was kind of lackluster in my roll. Only got 1 wound on that guy, so that pretty much makes it the magic phase. So with the magic phase over with, we skip shooting phase because everything pretty much marched forward. That or I'm out of range, and we go directly to the combat phase. Alright, so that takes directly to the combat phase. As you can see here, the fight between Totodile as well as Squirtle as well as Gatorade and Powerade was completely one-sided. I was able to put 9 wounds directly onto the degenerates, killing 2 bases of Nurglings and put a floating wound on another. Luckily for me, my opponent was able to do anything back to me whatsoever, so because I win this combat, and because they're demonic and they're unstable, this last little unit goes poof and goes directly into the clouds. Now luckily for me though, since I didn't have to worry about pursuing, I could actually stand my ground and not have to worry about overrunning, so that part was really nice as well. And that pretty much makes it the combat phase for this one. So with the combat phase over with, you go directly to the bottom of turn number 1 for Dark Lord Mac and the Garden of Maladies. So that takes us directly to the bottom of turn number 1, and this is after the move phase, and as you can see, my buddy Dark Lord Mac decides to take the offense as well. The first thing he does, he actually declares a charge with Hastur the King in Yellow with Demon Prince, who goes flying across the battlefield and smashes directly into Squirtle as well as a Totodile. So because of my Truckle Down now is engaged in close combat with his Demon Prince. At the same time, he then also declares a charge with Horticulus Slimex as well as Mulch, his Exalted Hero, on a War Shrine of Chaos, and charges directly and successfully collides with Gatorade and Powerade as well. Now for the rest of the turn, he doesn't actually really charge anything, he just kind of marches and moves things up. On the left hand side, he moves with the Inglorious or Normal Moon Allowance, so that way they're in a good blocking position to stop my Jurassic Jousters from flank charging across the battlefield directly towards Horticulus Slimex or hitting his Dustman, so that was pretty smart of him. At the same time, he also moves up his Dustman, their normal Moon Allowance, so that way they can move up and cast spells with his Lore of Nurgle spells from Festus the Empowered. At the same time, you can see the Tallyman also marched forward. I think the reason why I did this is that way he can prevent any flank charges from me getting flank charges off on his Demon Prince. So the only way I can go through him is by going forward directly into him. So that's going to be a tough fight because that's a severe tar pitting unit right over there. Meanwhile, over here on the right-hand side, he just moves up the Droning Horrors as well as the Ruination of Prague up their Moon Allowance, just a normal Moon Allowance of hovering of just 10 inches. And I think it's because he plans on opening fire with his Death Heads directly into my Charizards as well as into my Skinks for my Karmic Chameleons. So that part is pretty rough as well. So with the move phase over with, we go directly to the magic phase. So that takes us to the magic phase for Dark Lord Mac. The first thing he does when he rolls for the Winds of Power, he rolls a 6, which means that he gets the Reign of Chaos turn effect Rot, Glorious Rot. And as you guys can see over here on the left-hand side, that spell actually goes off directly onto my Jurassic Jousters. Magic killed 2 of those guys, which is really sad. And the reason why is like, yes, it's only a Strength 3 hit, and yes, I'm Toughness 4, but I get no armor saves. So because of that, he managed to kill 2 of my guys, getting 9 shots off with that spell, and that part was totally demoralizing. So that part was pretty crazy. Also managed to get off one of my, kill one of my Thesaurus as well, but you really can't tell from this distance because I have a huge honking unit's worth. Unfortunately for the rest of him though, for the rest of the spells, he wasn't able to get off anything else than he wanted to. The reason why is because I actually generated more Dispel dice than he did Power dice because of my Harmonic Convergence ability, so that way I can roll additional channeling dice as well as my channeling staff. Plus I got 3 people who could also channel Dispel dice as well in my army, so I was able to shut down his magic phase pretty effectively. He was trying to get off Curse the Leper off directly onto his Exalted Hero for Horticulus Slimex and Mulch, but was pretty much lackluster there. So with the magic phase over with, we go directly to the shooting phase. As weird as it may sound to say that for a Chaos army, this army does have some shooting. So during the shooting phase, my buddy Dark Lord Matt concentrated fire, had all 5 members of his play drones from the Ruination of Prague, the 2 members of the Ruination of Prague, as well as the 3 Droning Horrors. Both those units opened fire with their death's heads directly into my Charizards. Managed to kill one of my Charizards and actually put a 2 floating wounds on another one. Unfortunately for me though, I did fail my cool test for my leadership test for this one, so because of these guys did break, they fled back 6 inches through the forest, and they're currently on the run right now as we speak. And at the same time, kind of opening up my right-hand flank for Droning Horrors to assault if they so choose. So with the shooting phase over with, we go directly to the combat phase between these characters. So during the combat phase, ended up having as a Dark Lord Mag, of course, declared a challenge with Festus, with Horticolic Slime Mix and Mulch against Gatorade and Powerade, and of course I accepted. After we got done trading blows, I was able to put 3 wounds directly onto Horticolic Slime Mix and Mulch, and they managed to put 1 wound directly onto Gatorade and Powerade. Since we basically both were still engaged in close combat, because if we kill each other, they're still engaged in close combat. We'll continue to fight further on. Now, if you're wondering how Horticolic Slimus could be alive, even though he's Exalt here with only 2 wounds, the reason why is because the way my gaming group and I play, we combine the wounds of Chariots as well as the Riders. Makes it a little bit more resilient, and you might be thinking, oh, Commander Cheapskate, that's kind of crazy. Well, my opponent's also playing at the nose for the point value for that too, so that's how we play in my group, and that's exactly what we're going to do. Meanwhile, over here, the fight between Hastur, the King in Yellow, as well as Squirtle and the Total Dial actually ended up being almost a draw. Managed to put 3 wounds directly onto Squirtle and the Total Dial. I was able to put 3 wounds directly back on Castor, the King in Yellow. He actually won by 1 because he charged forward, but because I'm cold-blooded, I didn't break, so we're still engaged with another round of close combat. And with that being said, folks, that takes directly to the end of turn number 1 and directly to the top of turn number 2 for the Lizardmen. So that takes us directly to the top of turn number 2 for the Lizardmen, and this photo is after the move phase. So first thing I do, of course, I declare a charge with my Jurassic Jousters. They go directly into the Inglorious and engage those guys in close combat. Meanwhile, Gatorade and Powerade are still engaged in close combat with Horticolic Slimex as well as Mulch. Same thing with the Squirtle and the Totodile. They're still engaged in close combat with Hastur, King in Yellow. From there, I then declare a charge with my Thesaurus, and my Thesaurus go directly into the front of the Droning Hordes, catching those guys in close combat. And yes, I am in a forest. We just move the forest out of the way so that way I can put my unit there. That way you can see the little, sticky note that we have back there saying that we're in a forest as well. Now, granted, yes, that does cause me to be disrupted a little bit, which means I don't get rank bonuses, but that's not what I'm banking on. I'm really banking on the fact that I'll be able to cause enough damage with my Predatory Fighter's ability, plus my Sorcerer fighting with spears, so I should do have a pretty good chance of actually just destroying this unit or really cutting it down significantly. Because that way they don't have to worry about being outflanked on the right-hand side by flying monstrous cavalry at the same time. While that's occurring, of course, I decided to also keep my my skinks directly where they're located at. The reason why is so that way they can shoot with their javelins directly into what's left of the Ruination of Prague. And finally, as you can see right there, my Charizards managed to get their nerf back, and they passed the rally test, and so they're ready to move out again. And that pretty much makes it the move phase for turn number 2. So move phase over with, we go directly to the magic phase. So during the magic phase, I actually had a pretty powerful one. Actually ended up with 12 power dice when it was all said and done. However, though, my opponent kind of just kept most of his power dice in reserve in order to get off the spell, to try to dispel the spell I wanted to get off originally. So the first thing I did, of course, is I cast the Comet of Cassandor. I put it right behind here, behind the main lines of the enemy for the Garden of Maladies. Unfortunately for me, though, my Blade Dark Lord map was not falling for my trick, so he let me get that spell off. So because of that, that's why that spell's inactive, which is kind of great, because if it managed to blow up, hopefully it'll just be damaging my opponent's lines and not my own. Now, meanwhile, I then cast the boosted version of Soul Quench off from my from Cover the Slan. Cover the Slan used the Arcane Vassal ability off on Snarl to open fire with it directly into the Ruination of Prague. Managed to kill the last of those guys, so that part was kind of nice as well. I did try to cast the spell Hand of Glory off the boosted version. That was a spell I really wanted to get off from my Temple Guard. But unfortunately for my opponent, that was able to stop that spell by using all of his Dispel dice, managed to roll boxcars, and managed to shut that spell down. So with the magic phase over with, you go directly to the shooting phase. And during the shooting phase, I opened fire with my Karma Kimberlians with their poison Lustrian javelins directly into the last of the Ruination of Prague, and managed to wipe that unit off the table, which is all kinds of fantastic. So with the shooting phase over with, we go directly to close combat. In the combat phase, as you can see in this photo here, the Jurassic Jousters had no problem whatsoever wiping out the last of the degenerates. I'm sorry, the Inglorious. So because of that, those guys are now killed, which kind of frees up my left-hand approach. That way I can start charging directly into the left-hand flank of my opponent. Meanwhile, the fight between Gatorade and Powerade against Horticola, Slimex, and Mulch end up being a standstill. We just can't end up wounding each other. Either our ward saves or our armor saves are saving us pretty much. These two guys are still engaged in close combat, as crazy as that may sound. Meanwhile, over here on the right-hand side, unfortunately, Hastur the King of Yellow was able to put the last 3 wounds directly onto Squirtle as well as the Totodile, so because I do lose my Troggledon, which is kind of funny because now you can turn over to the right-hand side and get a beautiful flank charge off directly against my Temple Guard, which is all kinds of, insane. Meanwhile, the fight between the Tallyman as well as the Temple Guard was actually very, very good. What ended up happening is that Barnabas the Scrivener, which is the battle standard bearer for this army, is also a Herald of Nurgle. He declared a challenge, and so because I decided to answer with the Reverend Guardian, which is the champion of my Temple Guards. So oddly enough, Barnabas the Scrivener was able to actually cause any wounds whatsoever. I, however, was able to put a wound directly onto him, which is all kinds of awesome. Afterwards, we engaged in a normal close combat. My opponent was able to kill 5 of my Temple Guard. Meanwhile, I was able to kill 7 of his Plague Bearers. Now, because of the differences in combat resolution, of course, me winning the combat on this one, managed to pop another 5 more Plague Bearers because of demonic instability. And so we keep on going because, unfortunately, demons are unbreakable. Meanwhile, over here on the right-hand side as well, the fight between the Thesaurus as well as the Droning Horrors was not as good as I was hoping it was going to be. In the end, they managed to kill 4 of my Thesaurus, which is kind of sad. However, though, I was able to kill 1 of their Droning Horrors, as well as put a floating wound on another one, and because of the difference in combat resolution, was able to put another wound on him as well. Unfortunately, charging through the force and losing my rank bonuses because of disruption was a really, really bad idea. It was a kind of a gamble. I was trying to protect my right-hand flank, and now I'm going to pay the price for it, because now I'm engaged in close combat again for another round. And as you can see, ladies and gentlemen, that pretty much makes up the combat phase for the end of turn number 1. Top of turn number 2. Now we go directly to the bottom of turn number 2 for my buddy Dark Lord Mac and the Maladies, Garden of Maladies. Alright, so that takes us directly to the bottom of turn number 2 for the Garden of Maladies, which is the Nurgle Legion of Chaos, and this is after the move phase for Dark Lord Mac. So for the most part, he's pretty much been engaged in close combat for most of his forces. However, on the left-hand side, he does move up the Dustmen up their normal wound allowance over to the left-hand side, so that way they can block any left-hand charges from the Jurassic Jousters from hitting his army. At the same time, he also moved Hastur the King of Yellow over here to the back left-hand corner of my Guacamole Guards, not charging in. And at first I was kind of wondering why I was doing that, but then I realized it's because he's a level 4 wizard with lore of death magic, and he can't be engaged in close combat to use most of his spells, so I have the sneaky suspicion he's going to try to kill my Slan Mage Priest current the Slan using lore of death spells. Meanwhile, it does a quick sweet reform real quick with his unit of the Tallyman, putting them correctly into a column formation, so that way they have rank bonuses and they can last a little bit longer in close combat. His Droning Horrors are still engaged in close combat with my Thesaurus, and that pretty much makes up his move phase for this one. So move phase over with, we go directly to the magic phase. Now we go directly to Dark Lord Mac's magic phase. So first of all, the first thing he was able to get off was Blades of Putrefaction. Gives +1 to the poison attacks for his weapons, meaning he's poisoning down to 5 up now. And since these Nurgle warriors are carrying additional hand weapons, that makes them pretty dangerous as well. At the same time, I was able to cast the Shroudlings spell as well, getting hard cover for the Dustmen, as well as for the Tallymen, as well as for Horticolic Slimex and Mulch, and for his General Hastur the King in Yellow, which means they'll have penalties to hit them in close combat. However, the piece de resistance for the magic phase, however, was that my opponent, Dark Lord Mac, was able to cast the boosted version of Purple Son of Xarius. I was able to get the boosted version off, and there was nothing I could do about it because, unfortunately for me, my opponent miscast on that one. We'll talk about the miscast here in a second. So when he rolls, he puts the template, the large template, right next to my Guacamole Guards. He rolls a scattered the artillery die, rolls an 8, so he'll be traveling 24 inches across my Guacamole Guards, as well as across my Thesaurus, and it will deposit itself here in the Great Void. So we'll talk about exactly what happened to the miscast, as well as for the effects of the Purple Son of Xarius here in a second. So, this is the aftermath of the magic phase for turn number 2. As you can see, the Purple Son of Xarius went across the entirety of my Guacamole Guards. Killed every single one of my Guacamole Guards to the last man, including Kermit the Slan, my Mage Priest. And then, to make matters worse, it goes directly through the rest of my Thesaurus. Those guys get chopped up pretty good. I think only 2 members of my Thesaurus actually survive. So because of that, they of course have to flee, because they have to have Insane Courage. I don't run Insane Courage, and I flee through the forest, and because it's dangerous terrain for my infantrymen, I roll in the 2 guys who did flee, died from dangerous terrain tests, which then cause a chain reaction to take place over here. Because this is a unit destroyed within 6, the Carmelic Chameleons have to take a break test, a panic test, which they failed, and I can't re-roll it because my general is dead. And same thing, my battle center bears, they flee back 8 inches, which then causes my Charizards to take a break test. They panic and fail, and they flee like 12, so they fly off the edge of the table. And as you can see, pretty much my entire army is pretty much wiped out at this point. And there's like where the purple sun of Zarius is currently at. It was absolutely insane. And here is the insult to injury real quick. So my opponent, Dark Lord Mac, rolled on his miscast chart, rolled a 7, and he ward saved the wound that he was supposed to get. And he used up all of his power dice as well. Look at that smug. Look at that smile. He knows. He knows. So as you can see, the only thing I have left is my Carnosaur as well as my Coleman Riders. And at this point, I decided to call the game just because I don't have an army to fight with anymore. And yeah, that was absolutely insane. Anybody who knows my history with magical vortexes know exactly how I feel about them. Oh, it was so painful. Okay, folks, with that being said, we're going to go to the after action report because this game is now officially over.
That's it, man. Game over, man. It's game over.
I thought about staying. They offered me the chance to lead them, to teach them, to be king.
Uh-huh.
But my place is here, so I swallowed the juice, said the words, and here I am.
Did you say the words right this time?
Well, maybe I didn't say every single tiny little syllable, no, but basically I said them, yeah. Basically.
Now it's time for the after action report. This is the part of the battle report we talk about what went well, what went poorly, and what we can learn for the next time that we do battle. This is the after action report for the Golden Age Warhammer Fantasy Battle Report number 138, and this one ended up being a defeat for yours truly. In the end, my buddy Dark Lord Mac was able to score 2,053 victory points, and I was only able to score 900 victory points. For my losses, I lost Kermit the Slam, the Thesaurus, the Guacamole Guards, the Charizards, Squirtle, and the Totodile. Dark Lord Mac, he lost the Inglorious, the Degenerates, the Droning Horrors, and the Ruination of Prague. Currently, my army's record is at 8 victories as well as 3 losses, so it's not bad, all things considered. I was doing pretty well at the beginning of this battle report, and granted, the Nurglings did kind of slow down my flanking attack with both my cavalry as well as my monsters, but I was in pretty good position to cause some serious pain to my opponent. And yeah, it was kind of a bonehead move to put my Thesaurus into the forest to fight against the Droning Horrors. Looking back now, that was a pretty bad idea because being disrupted like that, especially if you're doing it voluntarily, is a seriously tactical error. And the reason why is because I don't get rank bonuses. So the next time I will avoid doing that in the future. However, what ended up killing me in the end was the purple sun of Zarius. I should have known Dark Lord Mac was up to something when he held back his Demon Prince, Hastur the King in Yellow. He didn't charge into my flank. I'm like, why is he doing that? And then suddenly it dawned on me because he's going to try to cast some Lord Death spells. Magical vortexes. For any of you who guys ever watched this channel before or been a long time viewer of the channel, you know that magical vortexes are the bane of my existence and they haunt my dreams. Especially when I have a huge template blast going through my entire army that I only have initiative 2 or less. So because of that, I just lost everything. And that's the problem. That's the problem with keeping such large units like my Guacamole Guards and the Thesaurus. While their size does mean that they're more survivable and can, withstand a lot of punishment, it also means that when they're destroyed, they also cost a ton of points as well. So because of that, my buddy Dark Lord Mac was able to get the win on this one pretty quickly. But still, even though I did lose this one, this was still an extremely fun game against an amazing opponent. And as always, I am looking forward to the rematch. So that's good for this one, you guys. As always, please feel free to like, comment, and or subscribe. Your guys' input is always appreciated. Also, check us out on the YouTube community tab, Facebook, Instagram, as well as blogger.com for all the latest, greatest hobby news related to this channel. That's good for this one, you guys. We'll catch you guys next one. Peace out and stay classy.